This is lesson 1.2 in pre-algebra, and the name of this section is addition with negative numbers. And boy, this just seems to be such a struggle for so many students, adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. In the book, they talk about using a number line in order to figure out how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers, and you can read those couple pages on how to use a number line. Maybe it'll help you to get a better idea of how to do that. But most of us, when you get into upper level math, you never use the number line to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. You use different clues that either your teacher has helped you with or you've made up on your own that are going to help you. So hopefully I can give you some tips when it comes to adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. So let me give you my first tip here. When you're adding two positive numbers together, you will always get a positive number. When you add two negative numbers together, you will get a negative number. Okay, so let's look and see what happened here. When the signs are the same, 3 there's nothing there, there's no negative sign, so it's an assumed positive, and the 8 doesn't have a negative, so it's an assumed positive. When the two numbers have the same signs, you add the two numbers and put the signs of the two numbers on your answer. So this was a positive, this was a positive, your answer will be positive. So you just add 3 and 8 and get 11. This one here, same thing. You're going to add the 3 and the 8 and get 11. The sign here was negative, the sign here was negative, therefore the sign in your answer has to be negative. Okay? So when the signs are the same, you add the two numbers and put the sign on your answer. Okay? Now let's look at when the signs are different. -3 plus 8. And let's look at +3 plus -8. Lame 8 there. Okay, let's see what happens. What we did here is we're taking two numbers that have different signs. This one is a negative, this one's a positive, this one's a positive, this one's a negative. Okay, so what we do when the signs are different. Okay, so when the signs are different, we take the difference between the two numbers. Okay, so we ignore the signs. We just look at the signs to see, oh, they're different. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the two numbers, the 3 and the 8, and we're going to take the difference between the two numbers. And the difference between 3 and 8 is 5. And we will put the sign of the largest number on the answer. Now let's look at the bottom one here. We take the difference between 3 and 8. And the difference between 3 and 8 is 5, just like it was up here. And then we put the sign of the largest number on the answer. So we got two different answers. We got 5 for both of them, but one was a positive 5 and one was a negative 5, strictly because the signs were on different numbers. Over here, the positive sign was on the 8, and over here, the negative sign was on the 8. Since the 8 was the bigger number, it's going to determine what sign is on the answer. So let's look at a couple of these here. Let's look at something as crazy as example 5, where we have 10 plus -5, and they put parentheses on there just so they do that all the time because you very rarely will see when they have two signs side by side like that without parentheses. They just put the parenthesis to show that this minus sign or the negative sign goes with the 5 and that this negative sign goes with the 3. It's the only reason they do that. Okay, so let's look at these two. We have a 10 and we have a -5. All right, the sign on the 10 is positive, the sign on the 5 is negative. So we're going to take the difference between let me make a little parenthesis here. We're going to take a difference between the 10 and the 5, and we're going to put the sign of the largest number on the answer. Okay, now we're going to look at the next number. We've got a plus -3. Okay, so we've done that. That part of it's done. Now let's look and see what we've got here. Again, we have a 5 that's positive, and we have a 3 that's negative. The signs are different. So we're going to take the difference between 5 and 3. In this case, it's 2. And we're going to put the sign of the largest number on our answer. In this case, our largest number is a positive 5, so our answer is going to be positive 2. Now we're going to add 4. And you'll notice the signs are the same. We have a positive 2 and a positive 4. When the signs are the same, you add the numbers up, and you put the sign that you are working with, in this case positive, on the answer. In fact, when it is positive, you don't have to put the plus sign on there. It's an assumed plus sign. The only time you need to put a sign on the number is when it's negative. All right, so let's look at example 6 here. Okay, so example 6 looks a little scary. The numbers aren't what are scary. It's all the weird symbols that we have here. I mean, we have braces here and brackets here and all kinds of stuff on here, which makes it a little bit difficult. All these little symbols here do is try to give you an idea of, okay, do this part first. Okay, so what they're saying is they're saying that anything inside of these braces here, these little square things, I get confused on which names to give all of these, so sometimes I just call them square things. The book uses the word brackets here. So what that says is, let's look at what's in here first and do that. And then we'll look inside here and do what's inside of here. And then last, we'll take what we get here and what we get here, and we'll add them together. So that's what we're going to do. Is we're going to look here. And what it says here is -3 plus -10. All right, what do we see here? We see that the 3 is a negative and the 10 is a negative. So the signs are the same. When the signs are the same, you add the two numbers and you put the sign on the answer. And we're going to go ahead and leave our brackets there. All right, now let's look at this over here. We've got two numbers. We have an 8, no sign in front of there, so we assume it's positive. And we have a 2 that's negative. So we have a positive 8 and -2. So we have two numbers. The signs are different. So we take the difference between 8 and 2. Whoops. Hope if I make the right bracket there. Okay, so I get a 6. The difference between 8 and 2 is 6. And the sign that goes on 6 is the sign of the largest number. The sign of the largest number is positive, so that stays positive. So now I have a -13 and a +6. Okay, so let's look at these the same way. I have two numbers that I'm adding together. One's a negative, one's a positive. When the signs are different, I take the difference between the two, and I put the sign of the largest number on the answer. And I am done. And that's it for lecture 1.2. In the next video, we'll do some problems from the problem set.